All right, hello again, everybody. This is Derek, and I am coming back at you with another wargaming and miniature video. Now we're going to be continuing on with our weekly live stream today. And in today's video, I'm going to be focusing on assembling some 28 millimeter Napoleonics for a commission. But as I pick these up and clear my table, you can kind of get a sneak peek, I guess, of the progress that I'm making on these buildings. They're not finished yet, obviously, but well, not obviously, but they're playable. But I'm still working on them, and I'm recording some 15 millimeter Sarissa building videos for my channel. And oh wait, I guess I could turn that off. There we go. And these buildings were specifically chosen to be used during my Quatre Bras battle, but also American War of Independence. Some of these buildings are like these two specifically are Americana buildings, as well as this guy right here, and this one is also Americana, but this is the European Church. But basically, I'm working on these. Currently, I'm recording the painting process where I'm painting these buildings. And once I get them all painted, because I'm not doing one at a time, I am going to. Okay, this is kind of not hard to say, but it's how do I want to choose my words? I'm painting them assembly line style, right? I'll do like red, 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 and then I'll do blue, 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 or green, 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 right? Okay. But I'm recording each building separately. So like this cottage, I will film me painting something on this cottage, and then I will film me painting something on this building, and then I will film, and then if I switch colors and I go back to the cottage, I will record filming another different color on the cottage, and then I will get back to this building and I'll film another different color on this building. And then what I plan to do is, once they're all done, take each of those separate videos and take all of the cottage videos and make a video, and all of the church videos and make that a video, editing them together. So basically, I've already got like 20 separate videos, and I need to finish these and then consolidate all those videos, if that makes sense. Okay. Now, I still have these paints remaining to be used on these buildings. I pulled the paints out to kind of give me a there we go, to kind of prepare my paints so that as I use each color, I can put it away. Unless I'm planning on using it again, which is also a possibility. Okay. Got that. Now this is going to go off to the side. I'll get back to it probably later this afternoon. All right. How's everybody doing this morning? You guys doing all right? I hope you are. I'm doing okay. I got a little upset stomach this morning. I usually get that in the morning. I don't know. I've got this condition, I guess. Okay, but um, while I was waiting for something to dry, I don't remember what it was. I don't remember, but I painted something and I was waiting for it to dry. It was taking a moment. And my mind is going blank. I don't remember what it was. But while I did that, I decided that I would work on some of my Napoleonics that needed to be rebased, right? So, did I turn off autofocus? I don't know if I did. No, it's still on autofocus. Okay, good. I pulled out all of the Allied artillery. Well, not all. Almost all of the artillery that needed to be rebased for the Allied side. And remember, I'm doing 2 guns per battery. So these are a bunch of Allied batteries. And I got them all rebased. They actually debased fairly easily. I did use a new blade to cut them off the old bases, but the guns, they pretty much just pop off almost, and the infantry crew members, there's only like 3 per gun, so it was actually fairly quick. I got these guys debased. Okay, so you can see how many of them I got accomplished, and I was super happy about that. We're gonna I also did a new basing technique, blocking, that I'm not sure if I like yet. Okay, so they definitely have a has a different appearance, but I think I went overboard, is what I think. Because normally I use like earth blend, earth texture, medium earth on the base, right? And then I sprinkle a couple of stones on there, like what you see on here, and then I go over it with the static grass, right? A specific color of static grass, and those look really good. But I wanted to try this new foliage that I got from Woodland Scenics, the coarse turf, right? So I got excited and I did 1 or 2 bases. I know I did 2 bases with just the coarse turf. And it looked okay, but it looked, I saw it was like, once it dried, it was like a 50-50. I could see the dirt underneath, and it was the coarse turf was kind of spotty, which made it look like they were standing in the dirt with some bushes around them. So that's not the look that I was going for. I was hoping it would have better coverage. Well, it doesn't. It has pretty horrible coverage. So going forward, after those first two, I decided just to go ahead and cover it with blended turf, right? And this has excellent coverage, right? So I covered them with blended turf, and then went back over it. I like did the outer sides or the corners with some additional glue. So once the coarse turf, or I'm sorry, once the blended turf had dried, right, then I went in with some watered down Mod Podge. I've been using Mod Podge, and I put I wet certain areas, and then I sprinkled the coarse turf on top of that, and this is the effect that I'm going to show you every single one of these bases. So now we're just trying to get it to focus. Okay, so that's the effect. It gives it a lot of texture. I think I put too many rocks, right? It makes it look like they're in a bad place. I need to maybe pluck some. I can always go in with my tweezers or a knife, and I can pop some of these rocks off of there, because I think right now, just looking at it, there's way too many. Like, this guy has none, because I think a couple of these guys I had come on, focus, there we go. I had basically just overlooked it and forgot. Okay, so you see how the texture is? It seems like, I mean, it's good. It kind of looks like they're in some kind of wild, I don't know how to explain it. Not weeds, but just, it just makes the, now okay, that's a good amount of rocks. Not too terrible. I've even got a howitzer here. But I'm showing the blended turf, and then about half in the corners mostly was coarse turf. Maybe too many rocks. Okay. Okay, I think that might be the perfect amount of rocks actually on this one. It gives it just a little bit of rocks. Yeah, but you can see the bushes, right? How it's, that's just nothing but blended turf base, and then I sprinkled some, I added some glue on top of it, wet it down, basically. It's mostly water, I think. And then I sprinkled some coarse turf on there, and it gave it kind of a 3D texture. Okay, I guess that's all I need to show you. I don't need to show you all of them. But basically, I've got Sandham's battery, got Cleve's battery, Braun, he's a Hanover. Braun's battery. The Hanover artillerymen were wearing British uniforms. And then I've got this Dutch-Belgian Bijleveld, his battery. They actually have Dutch artillery uniforms. I got Lloyd's battery. Kuhlman, he's actually KGL. That's another thing. KGL was wearing British artillery uniforms. Rogers battery. And Dutch-Belgian Stevenart. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think we'll figure it out. But I think one of these tubs is finished and the other one's not. I don't remember which one it is. I'll have to take a look at them. And we're going to do some trimming. We're not going to do any painting today. I might do some gluing and assembly. That's a possibility. Put one of these thumb cozies on. But before we get into any of that, I want to share with you something that's happened over the last 72 hours or whatever. I've had a change of heart. With my World War II gaming. Okay, just let me preface that. I don't know if you guys know this, but there's really 3 genres that I'm really into when it comes to miniature wargaming. There are other genres that I will play and I will have a good time, but there are really 3 genres that I focus on personally. One of them being Napoleonics, as you just saw my artillery pieces. And I'm writing my own Napoleonic rule set called Marshals and Generals. Sorry, I needed something. And this can has seen better days. Something happened to that can. But it's okay. It's like steel. This is a steel can, not aluminum or whatever. It's tough. Okay, so I do Napoleonics. I actually got started with 1/72 and then I progressed to 15 millimeter. And then a few years ago, when I discovered black powder, I went to 28 millimeter. But I realized 28 millimeter for me is just too much table space. It's just too big. So I've gone back to 15 millimeter, and I'm writing my own rules. I don't plan to play. I honestly don't plan to play black powder ever again. Um, Let me rephrase that. I'll play it, but I don't plan to collect it personally. I'm collecting 15s, and when you get into Napoleonics, there's a never-ending supply of units that you have to get or want to get or just crave or need to get. And you could live your entire life painting Napoleonic figures and never get them all, right? So, so I'm not going to do that in multiple scales. I'm not going to do 1/72nd. I'm not going to do 28 and 15 and 10 and 6 and 3 millimeter Napoleonics. No, I'm going to stick with 15s, and that's it. Because one of the reasons why I like bigger figures like 28 millimeters, like these, when it comes to Napoleonics, is because there's a lot of detail. You can put a lot of you can put a lot of effort into the uniforms, and they can look really good on the table. So bigger figures definitely make it easier to see all those details and stuff. The problem with bigger figures is they take up too much space on the table. And then there are small, I even tried 10 mil Napoleonics. Those figures, I thought that I wanted the smaller figures so that I could get more of them on the table, right? Well, I tried some 10 mil. I painted some, what did I paint? Some Brunswickers and some Dutch Belgian militia and some cavalry, maybe lancers or something. Yeah, so I painted some units, and I realized that they're too small. They made me feel like I was playing micro armor or something. And there's nothing wrong with micro armor, but the infantry in micro armor leaves a lot to be desired. The tanks, not so much. They're beautiful. So I said, man, I'm going back to my original 15 millimeter. So 15 millimeter is where it's at, and that's where I'm going to stay, because they're big enough that you can see all the detail, and small enough that you can get more of them on the table. So 15 millimeter is the way to go for me. And World War II, I've been playing Bolt Action. I played Operation World War II. Originally, my version of it was called Operation Overlord, but they came out with a second edition, which was Operation World War II, which was a PDF download. But there was no real rule change. There was no rule change, but they included the Russians, because Operation Overlord was just D-Day and the armies involved in D-Day. But they realized that's a good system that could be used all over the world. And really, you could use it with Japanese and Italians and Hungarians, and you could use it with everybody. But really, they just added the Russians, and it kind of fell apart, I think. Operation Overlord kind of lost its allure or whatever. And there was a few other man-to-man games that I got. Operation Squad or something like that. there was a game called uh, oh crap. Oh, what was it? Not Chain of Command, not Rapid Fire. I didn't enjoy either of those. Blitzkrieg Commander. There was something from Easy 8. Oh, what was that game called? Uh, Easy 8 made a miniature game, man to man, and that was okay. It just didn't scratch my itch, right? Um, Operation World War II was really good, but it was a randomized game, which I kind of don't like. Right? You drew cards, and then based on the card you drew, you played the card on your squads to get them to do what was on the card. So the explanation was that all your men know what they need to do, and they know, like, they all know the objective, and they all know the orders you gave them, because it was kind of like a platoon level game. So they know what they're supposed to do, but when they do it or how they do it is left up to the individual squad leaders, right? Or the platoon leader or whatever. The unit, the smallest unit leaders. And these cards represented movement, shooting, ambush. I think that's really all it was. I don't remember what the cards were. But if you wanted a unit to move, you'd have to have a move card in your hand. And you would play it. And there were numbers on these cards that you had to play them in order of the numbers. It was kind of like you'd go back and forth. Like if I have like you would call out, okay, initiative 7. If you've got a 7 in your hand, you could play it. You don't have to. You can hold on to it. But if I had a 7, I could play it. And then if my opponent had a 7, he could play it. And then we would go to 6, and then 5, and then 4, and then, or something like that. I don't remember. Or maybe it was 1 up. But it was a unique system, and it worked really well. It just felt like it was too not unpredictable, because I love unpredictable games, but it was just too, it didn't feel right. Let's just say that. It didn't feel like it didn't feel like a war game. It felt like a card game at that point. And I used to have that World War II card game, Eagles or something. Eagles made a Napoleonic one, but there was also a World War II one where you set up the battlefield on the table with these cards, terrain cards, and then you would have unit cards, and they would move around, and artillery cards and stuff. It was a pretty, that's beer and pretzels, but it was fun. Okay, so basically I've been struggling finding a World War II game that scratched my itch. And then I came across Battle Group. Right? Now, bear with me. I'm getting there. This is not about Battle Group. But I found Battle Group and I said, that's a pretty cool game. It's man to man. And it doesn't, I can play with 15 millimeter miniatures or 20 millimeters, but I can play with 15s. We can get a battle done in a day. And what I'm putting on the table is about a company per side, approximately, like 3 platoons per side. And I collected a bunch of miniatures. I got a ton of miniatures over there in those drawers for Battle Group. I decided instead of basing them individually, I would base them in movement trays like Flames of War and move like groups of guys together, and because it would be easier to move 15 millimeters that way instead of moving individual models. Battle Group is, there's a lot of good rules concepts in Battle Group that I'm going to be using these. I'm going to be using 1 or 2 of them in my Marshals and Generals game because I think it's that strong. But there are other parts of Battle Group that rub me the wrong way. Overall, I would give that rule set a 7 or an 8 because it's pretty darn good, right? I'm not going to give it a 9 or a 10. Maybe an 8, but there's a couple of things in that rule set that rub me quite a bit the wrong way. And one of them is artillery. The artillery system is very efficient. I mean, it works. It works. It's logical. I like the die rolls. I like the numbers for that game. But having said that, it's too dominant, right? That it's not supposed to be, right? It's supposed to be okay. In my opinion, I'm playing a war game, right? And with emphasis on game. I've got an opponent. Could be me. I could be playing solo. But we got 2 sides. We're fighting. And the only thing that's happening, I'm lined up on my side. He's lined up on his side. And we're shooting artillery back and forth. And blowing each other up with artillery. One of the players takes one of his platoons. And he tries doing a flank, or he tries advancing across the center or wherever, and then artillery drops on him and finishes him off. You drive a couple of tanks around here and there, artillery drops on them and finishes them off. It felt like it was I think the rules were written by an artillery officer. Now, historically, would artillery be devastating? Yes. Historically, it would be. But it doesn't make for a good game, right? You gotta balance the historical aspect of it with the playability and the fun, right? And what are you trying to accomplish, right? If you're trying to accomplish who made the best artillery game, okay. But if you're trying to make a game called Battle Group, where you're focusing on infantry and armor taking objectives, then the artillery really needs to be limited. Now, in Battle Group, there's a rule where you have to make contact with your forward observer, and then you give them an order, and then and you're limited by how many orders you have, which is in my experience, is never a limit. You always have more orders than you need. So you make a contact with your FO, then the FO has to make, you have to roll and make contact with the battery that's firing. And then, and depending on if it's directly attached to your battle group or if it's an asset, like an external asset, like division or core or whatever, the die roll to connect is lower, but it's not low enough. Now I could get in there and modify the numbers and make artillery less effective. I could do that. But you make a roll for your artillery connection, and that's usually like 3 out of 4 rolls are going to be successful. So in 4 turns, you've made contact with your FO 3 times. And then your FO, if it's a direct connection, like direct attachment, he's going to connect all 3 times. Plus, if you've got any kind of forward, if you got the radio or the wire, I'm trying to remember which one it was, but there's an element that can be on the table that lets you re-roll, so it makes it automatic, right? Every time. I mean, if you're rolling an 8 or less on a D10, and you get to re-roll, you're pretty much getting an 8 or 10. I mean, it's very rare you're going to roll 2 9s and 10s. So out of 4 turns, you're getting 3 fire missions. These fire missions are devastating. When they land, and the area of effect is so large, right, that you can just destroy whole companies with one barrage. So yeah, I could fiddle with the numbers and lower that down, but it basically just, I don't like taking a set of rules and doing that. Yes, yeah. Why do I say that? I do like doing that, but I don't know. There's just something about the rules, and then there's also the really, I think here it is, the spotting rules. The spotting rules it's an excellent addition to the rules. Oh, another thing about artillery, let me go back up. They don't have any smoke rounds. 0. No artillery fires smoke. What the? And they don't even have any like concept of smoke in the entire game. It just, in my experience playing other games, World War II, smoke is very important on the attack. The defense, not. But on the attack, you got to lay smoke in certain areas to screen your advance or whatever, and they don't. I mean, just look at Nijmegen Bridge. Okay, without smoke, they would have been done for. Okay, so spotting. They have a pretty good system on how to roll for spotting and like distances and die rolls and how far away and did they shoot, did they not shoot. That system, the spotting system, is a vital aspect of those rules. It's like the number 1 rule. Spotting. And I like that that there is. I don't know if I'm yelling in the microphone. I'm sorry if I am. I'm just excited about what I'm about to tell you. So, and I'm doing a I'm getting to it. So bear with me, please. Please bear with me. I'm going to do a video about this. I'm going to record it. I'm going to edit it. I'm going to get rid of all my ums, and then okay. So so the spotting rules are a big portion of the game mechanics. So much so that they're intricate. They have a lot of modifiers. There's like a whole page of just modifiers for spotting. Then there's, what are you spotting? Infantry in the open, infantry in cover, infantry in a concealed position, infantry moving in the open, infantry firing from concealment, infantry firing in the open. All that. And then at what range are they firing, and who are they firing at, and what kind of, what caliber of rifle are they firing? That's not in there, but it felt like, did they shoot 2 bullets or 1 bullet, or did a guy stand up, or is he laying down? It just felt like there were so many modifiers, and which is not a problem if you got the quick reference sheet in front of you and you go this and this and this and this. Oh yeah, it's +7, and then you roll your die, right? I found that was what's the word? Not monotonous. It was superfluous? No, it was extraneous. It was a rule that doesn't need to be there. It's a beautiful rule. I understand the concept. I understand the reasoning in the rules. I agree with everything the game designer has said. I don't have any problem with the rule other than the fact that it exists. Or that it's super complicated. I like the rule. I like the idea. But it is way overcomplicated. And I haven't really thought about or understood or contemplated a way to make that easier until I'm about to tell you. I know you guys came here to see me do some 28mm Napoleonics, and I'll be getting to trimming these, cleaning them, and then maybe gluing them today. But I don't want to do that and say that, and I want to say this. I want to get this off my chest. So, so to be honest, I was initially, when I first got the set of rules and the scenario books, the campaign books, all the scenarios, and getting back into 15mm World War II, I was super excited and energetic about it. And I really got a lot of miniatures and painted up some tanks, and I really pumped a bunch of that stuff out for Battle Group. And then I played a few games, and I realized, reading the rules and then playing the game is sometimes different, right? So I read the rules, I understood them, I could read them backwards and forwards, no problem. Played a few games with some new players, explained the rules, everything went smooth. Except for the spotting took up the majority of the game You were constantly looking stuff up, rolling dice to see, because to be able to do direct fire at someone, you have to spot them. To do suppressive fire, you do not have to spot them. You could just suppress the wood line. You don't have to see them. But if you're trying to kill individual units in the woods or whatever, you have to be able to see them. So whenever you were shooting, you always had to roll spotting, and spotting had to be done every time you shot because they're in the woods. You might have lost contact with them. Smoke, hypothetically, or dust might have came across the battlefield. You might have had your head down, and when you brought your head back up, now you have to see if you can see them again. And so before every squad fired, you had to roll a spotting attempt for that squad. And the games that I played were company size, so you had 3 platoons of 3 squads. So you're looking at about 9 squads. And then you had machine guns and mortars and FOs and snipers. Okay, but mostly you're looking at about 10 to 12 spotting attempts. And then you shoot, and it has its own set of modifiers. And then there's artillery. And then artillery comes in and just devastates your hard-earned plans. And so I found that the artillery made the game bogged down because the artillery had multiple things you had to do. Don't forget that you got to contact the FO. Then the FO's got to contact the guns. Then when you shoot the gun, you got to roll to see if you land on target. And then if you do land on target, it still deviates. So you got to roll some deviation. And then you back up. You got to place a spotter round. Then you roll to see if the spotter round deviates. And then you roll to see if the artillery comes in. And then you got to roll hit. You got to have a template. And then you have to see how many guys get hit. Then you got to roll for those individual squads. And then for every man that gets hit, you got to roll to see how badly they're hit. And it was just a nightmare, right? So you had spotting takes up a third of the game, literally, and artillery takes up about a third of the game, and then moving and shooting takes up the other third. It was just very, very not action focused. It was very detail focused. Some people like that, right? Personally, I want to be able to move and shoot my elements. That's what I want to do. I personally was an infantryman. I personally like games that revolve around fire and maneuver with the threat of artillery. Not an artillery game with the potential for fire and maneuver. It felt like that's that kind of game. Okay. So I was watching a video from about 3 or 4 years ago. It might have been Salute. Somebody went through the convention center and they went around to all the different tables and they came across this they came across this game called O Group or Orders Group. So O Group is, I don't know if you guys know this, but it's a British Army term for when your commander brings in all of his subordinates and then he gives them their orders. In the U.S., we would call that an op order or a, well, sometimes it's a frago, but usually it's a, like a fragmentation order or an operations order. So it's basically an operations order where the battalion commander tells his company commanders, who tell their platoon commanders, what the mission of the day is or whatever, what they're planning on doing. Okay, well, that's what the British call that, an O group. And so I saw this game being played called O Group, and it was being played in 15 millimeter, and it was, I think it was Russian front, which I'm not really that excited about personally, but I understand the allure of the Russian front, and they got some pretty cool tanks and stuff. But I wasn't watching it for the... Well, I was watching it to see all the different games that were being played there. Really, I just wanted to see what people were playing. And this O Group came up, and everybody was having a good time. First of all, that's an indicator that the game is fun. When everybody, even the loser, is having a good time. Okay, so everybody's having a good time. There was a lot of things happening I stopped and I started watching to see, instead of just glancing and kind of overviewing the battlefields and stuff like that. This guy had a really good map too. He had a really good bespoke. He must have spent some time. It was multiple thicknesses, and the buildings and the roads and everything. It was rubble. It was mostly rubble, so that's not hard to do. But he did a really good job. And so I was watching this video, and then it caught my attention that everyone was having a good time, and the map looked really good. His figures looked really good, and he was moving units around. I didn't know what was going on. I had no clue, right? And they were moving these things called patrols. I don't even have any idea what that was. And then they were picking patrols up off the table. They were putting miniatures on the table. They were rolling handfuls of dice, and I was like, what the heck is going on here? So I decided to dig deeper into that. And so I searched the interweb, and I found O Group is pretty much being released or published by Two Fat Lardies, right? And they have a couple of tutorial videos on their site. Leads you to YouTube. And I was like, I started watching them, right? Just to see, what these mechanics were all about. And at first, I was kind of turned off. I'm going to be honest. Because of the way it was being presented was it kind of, I'm not going to say went over my head, but it kind of wasn't explained very clearly, right? But the more I watched, and it all started to click. It all started to fall into place. And I was like, oh, that actually, I was like, that's a stupid rule. That's just monotonous. That's just bullshit. That rule is there just to make things harder or whatever. And then as I kind of absorbed the rules, I was like, wait a second. That rule actually makes things easier now that I understand what's going on. It took me, to be honest, it took me a couple of days to kind of my wires to be switched in my head, like, oh, I get it now, right? And then I watched a couple of videos from somebody else, Storm of Steel, I think, right? He did some O Group videos, and he explained better some things. The Two Fat Lardies video was kind of like, roll some dice and move some figures, and it just didn't really. I understand now if I go back and I watch the Two Fat Lardies videos, I will understand what they're talking about because of some of the Storm and Steel videos. Because he would break down, like, what is a combat patrol, and just did a whole video just on that. And then, and I got super excited about it, guys. I'm telling you, I got excited. But at the same time, I had also gotten excited about maybe doing some command decision. Remember, I told you I really got started in World War II. Well, actually, I got started with Angriff. Remember that game? I never played a game of Angriff. I just owned. I played a game. No, I played one game of Angriff. That was my very first game of World War II. It wasn't enough. A friend of mine said tank charts. So I got tank charts from GHQ. Played a bunch of Micro Armor. That was my first start into World War II. And then I got Command Decision, which was made by GDW, which made Traveler, and I thought it couldn't go bad, and so I bought it. I think I got second edition. I don't think I got first edition. Might have been first edition, but I think it was second edition. And I played hundreds of games of that and loved it to death. And I played it in 1/72. And I loved it. I loved Command Decision. It was a good game. And I think I got second edition. And then when third edition came out, my observation was that Command Decision was done for. Pretty much, Command Decision 3 ruined the game. I've gone to conventions. I've seen people there that used to be avid Command Decision players. I used to play with them. They would say Command Decision 3 ruined their gaming club. Nobody plays Command Decision anymore. Why don't they just play Command Decision 2? You don't have to play 3, but you don't have to play it's your game. Play what you want. But what had happened was, and it happened to me. I stopped playing Command Decision, and then I ventured into a game called Spearhead and Battlefront, not Flames of War, a game actually called Battlefront, and it kind of pulled me out of the Command Decision funk that I was in, and I left it at that. Command Decision 3, no more command decision for me. No more, and then Spearhead. Spearhead's a good game. I like Spearhead. Battlefront, it also felt like it was artillery heavy. But Spearhead allowed me to play the same size games as Command Decision. Excuse me. In a campaign, because I played a Command Decision campaign called Bastogne, which the way I played it was every player got to play a division. So you had a whole division, and I provided you with the like a document that had all the battalions, all the regiments, all the support elements, all of that, and a map. It was a hex map, and of the Bastogne area. And the players would play 2nd Panzer Division, Panzer Lehr, or the 26 Volksgrenadiers, and then the other side would only have regiments. They wouldn't have divisions. So basically, the players on the Allied side were 1/3 the size of the players on the German side. So they had it was part of the 28th Infantry Division. It was the 110th Regiment, I think. But then there was the Combat Command R from 9th Armored, and then there was Combat Command Bravo from 10th Armored, and then eventually the 101st would show up, and with all their regiments and stuff. But so the players were trying to move across the battlefield, and they would write in orders. This is when we played with Command Decision. They would write in orders for their units, and they could write it however they want. They could say, 1st Battalion goes to this town, and then sets up a defense, or they go to this town and lay minefields if there was an engineer battalion, or this battalion would go to this river, create a river crossing, or it would go to this bridge and blow it up, or it would go to, or whatever they were doing. They could write all these orders, and then I would take the orders from both sides, and I have a master map where all the units are at, and then I would move those units based on their orders, and whenever units were impeded, like by other units, I would note the time of day, that because everything was timed, you had like an 8-hour turn period, and then each hex you could move an hour or something like that. So once I figured out whatever time it was, where these two units were within a table-sized box, I would stop the clock, tell the players, okay, this weekend we've got a battle. It's taking place in this spot with your units of this, and I would tell this guy with your units of this. I tried to keep everything top secret. I didn't tell both players how it went. If somebody was greatly outnumbered, right, like a whole regiment was coming on the table and you only had a squad, Command Decision doesn't break down to squads, but let's say a platoon in a certain area. I would ask the platoon player, okay, you got this regiment, overwhelming force. Do you want to withdraw? Do you want to fall back? Or do you want to play this out on the table you're going to die in like one turn, right? And usually they would say, I'm going to fall back. And then we wouldn't necessarily need to have a battle, right? But if there was ever like a company versus a battalion, or if there was something that needed to be defended, or if a player anticipated getting reinforcements because he had another unit moving into that area, might be later in the day, then we would play it out. And based on how units moved around the table, I would know, like I would box off an area of the map and say, okay, this is the map. And then I would figure out when the units would enter that. And then I note that time down. And then as we played the games, when that time, because like a game with a turn was like 15 minutes, I think. And so I'm trying to remember. So after like 4 turns, that's an hour. And so if you're after 8 turns, 2 hours. And if that's when your reinforcements arrived, that's when I say to the player, your other units are arriving. And command decision was fun, and it was exciting to play that way. And but Spearhead took everything from command decision and got rid of all of the extra BS and made it a super easy, fast playing game. So I figured switch to Spearhead, play the same campaign. Like I think it was my 3rd time playing that very same campaign. I was like, play with Spearhead, it'll speed everything up. We might be able to get 2 or 3 battles in one weekend instead of just one. So that's why I switched to Spearhead. But then I kind of lost. Actually, I was still working on a lot of my Spearhead units when I discovered bolt action. And I kind of just did a 180 and just built bolt action figures and played bolt action. And bolt action is an awesome game. Okay? And so is Battle Group. They're awesome games, but they're not designed to be played at such a large scale, where you got a whole regiment entering a table. Okay, because I can't remember what is what, I know I didn't do all of these. You guys don't know this, I didn't tell you. I had a disaster, I think it was Friday night, Saturday morning, something like that, where these boxes, one of them fell on the floor and figures just went everywhere. Heads rolled, right? But so we're going to start over. Hate to say it, but if it's already been trimmed, it should just go in there with no extra effort. Yep, you're good. In this tray, I'm more concerned about heads and backpacks. Yep, these guys are all squared away. And so I went to a forum. I was searching for O group info. I wanted to absorb some info. I wanted to see what other people were saying about it. You know, I didn't want to just take one or two people's opinion. I wanted to see if it was widely accepted. And I see it is widely accepted around a lot of different conventions. But while I was looking through different forums and stuff, I found a conversation about Command Decision 4. And I was like, Command Decision 4? I thought it was 3 and fail. And, but Command Decision 4 is called Test of Battle. And, I do remember seeing a couple of games of Test of Battle at my local convention. And I was like, oh, so that was actually Command Decision 4. Okay, so somebody's playing Command Decision 4. So I did a little research on Command Decision 4, Test of Battle, and they all, well, 99% of them said that they were huge fans of Command Decision 1 and 2. And when 3 came out, they didn't like it. It had some weird rules in it. But when Command Decision 4 came out, it sped up the rules, dropped a lot of things, streamlined a lot of things, and they like it, right? So they got rid of all the millions of chits on the table, which it wasn't that definitely was not a hard or even an obnoxious game mechanic. It was actually fairly easy to use. Remember, I played 100 games of Command Decision. But I can admit that it looked horrible on the table. And remember, I'm all about how my tables look. That's my top priority. If it's fast, fun, and playable, and how does it look? Does it look good on the table? And when you have a battalion on the table, 10 or 12 platoons, and every one of them's got like 2 or 3 chits behind them with different colors, green, red, yellow, it becomes a little obnoxious. I have to admit. Now, what I was doing was one head per figure to keep track. I'm going to give up on that idea. I'm just going to clean the bodies. There's usually a big burr right there in the neck. because my snippers can't reach down into the neck. Okay, so there was a lot of positive feedback all over the web about Test of Battle. A lot of people said, you know, if you liked Command Decision 2, you'll love Test of Battle. Apparently, there is a little dispute on a couple of the different rules. One of them is a card system for random events. I like random events. I like taking control away from players or trying to do things that avoid the 500-foot general syndrome. You probably heard me talk about that before, where, you know, you're omnipotent over the table. You can see where all the units are, and you can move them whenever you want, wherever you want, where an actual general on the table couldn't do that. I even tried to incorporate some of those concepts into my marshals and generals. But I think I'm going to do it the way Battle Group does it, through their chit morale system. Some of the chits will have random events on them. But some people don't like that card system in Test of Battle. And even the author, Frank Chadwick, got on there and tried to explain, you know, why they incorporated a card system. Also, this is the first time that I saw that Frank Chadwick was not the only person writing the rules. It was a partnership between him and another guy, I don't know his name. And that other guy introduced the card concept. And Frank likes it. But it was pointed out that that card system is really just an optional rule. It's in the advanced rules section, and they basically consider all the advanced rules to be optional. You pick and choose which ones you want to use. If you don't like the cards, don't use them. And they said they got rid of a lot of the they got rid of the chits for damage, and they got rid of a lot of things to speed the game up. They made the game a lot faster to play. And I was thinking to myself, it might be a happy medium between the command decision game that I love and the spearhead game that I love for being so fast. So, Finally, I'm getting to the point. So I ordered O Group and Test of Battle. O Group is one level below Command Decision. So Command Decision, each base of about 2 figures, or whatever, it doesn't matter, it's the base. Each base is a platoon. So you got your 3 platoons, that equals a company. Usually 3 companies equal a battalion. Usually. So you're looking at about 10 bases if you count the command stand. Maybe some supports. We'll just say 12. 12 bases equals a battalion in Command Decision. Now in O Group, a stand represents about a squad of men. So 3 of those equal a platoon. 3 platoons equal a company. And the company is a company commander. So in O Group, you're looking at about 10 to 12 stands is a company. That's why I say it's one level below. It's not a battalion, it's a company. And so to get a battalion on the table, which is what O Group is designed for, you have your 3 companies, and that equals your battalion. Now, in Command Decision, if you were to have the same number of figures, i.e. same number of bases, you now have a regiment. And that's more of a spearhead Command Decision game, is a regiment. So I did a little research. And in both of these games, Command Decision and O Group, the basing is pretty much the same. Number of figures, base size. Okay. So if I make a battalion, if I make a battalion for O Group, I will automatically have a regiment for Test of Battle. Using the same figures, same basing, everything. Okay, now when I ordered O Group, it came with a PDF. So actually you have to pay a little extra to get the PDF, but I did. So I got the PDF of O Group already on my computer. I don't fully understand the rules. I haven't fully read the rules. I've watched a few videos. I kind of love it, to be honest. Just it took me a couple of days to fall in love with it. Now, I haven't played it yet. And remember, I said sometimes you love something in book form, but when you actually play it, it comes out different. Well, I know I love Command Decision, right? I've played it a lot, and I really loved it. A lot of good times. Played it for almost 30 years now. Well, I haven't played it for 30 years. I played it 30 years ago. Shoot, when was the last time I played a Command Decision game? Let me think about that. Last time I played Command Decision. Wow, that was a long time ago. 20 years ago. Yeah, 20 years ago. Wow. Been that long since I played Command Decision? Whew. But O Group, I think, I don't know this for sure yet, but I think it can be scaled. Because the maneuver element in O Group is the platoon. You have like 3 infantry squads or stands in the platoon, and then the platoon moves around with like 3 bases. The rules say they have to be within 2 inches of each other. It's kind of like a cohesion thing. But I thought about the Lafir Bridge scenario from Battle Group, right? Which I played a couple of times. And I said, could I play the Battle Group scenario using O Group? Well, I can. There is 3 platoons in the Battle Group scenario. And so that's effectively one company. Technically, it's not. I mean, the men were from all different companies and platoons. They were just put together, for this fight. There were some glider troops. There were some paratroopers. But I'll have to do a little research. But the forces presented in the scenario might be adjusted for the game, right? Battle group. They might have said, okay, let's just put 3 platoons, and because we don't want to overwhelm the table or, you know, the commander. Or it might be exactly correct. But even if it is, if you played O group, if you played that scenario with O group, you'd only have 1 German company against 1 82nd company. It wouldn't be a whole battalion. But I think you could play it. I think you could play that scenario. And in O group, a tank model represents half a platoon. So 2 to 3 tanks. So there is a little bit of an abstract. And that's exactly like command decision. Command decision is a tank is a platoon of tanks. Could I play the Lafayette Bridge scenario with command decision? I don't think so. I mean, you could, but it would only be like 1 stand. It would be 1 stand of paratroopers. No, 2 stands of paratroopers and 1 stand of glider infantry. And then 1 stand of heavy weapons. That's not really a game, in my opinion. The command decision really expects it to be a much larger battle. You know, multiple battalions. Where O group is just companies, multiple companies. So remember the 2 rules I didn't like about battle group. Plotting was too detailed, and artillery was too time-consuming and deadly. Now, I don't know how the artillery works in O group, but I do know one thing. There's something called like the initial barrage, which has nothing to do with artillery. I mean, it's 100% artillery, but it doesn't have anything to do with your force and what artillery is included with your force. It's just a die roll, and it just happens. And the initial barrage might or might not even come into play. I dig that. Most likely it will, though. And then any other artillery there's usually only 3 attacking fire missions and 2 defending fire missions. For a total of 5 total fire missions for the entire battle. Not 1, not 3 every turn, none of that. Because you might have some artillery attached, or you might not. But you're limited on how many fire missions you can fire. And I noticed a couple of different people make artillery bases, like Flames of War or whatever. You got these 105 howitzers or 81 millimeter mortars or whatever it is. And then you put them at the edge of the table, either on or off the table, it doesn't matter. And then as you use your fire missions, you pull one of those artillery pieces off the table to simulate you've used up that mission. So they basically are counters. You don't need them. You can just put a little die, or you can use paper. But since I already have these artillery bases, I think that would be... And it's more visually appealing. Now, in the book, combat patrols are listed as 2-inch bases. Right? You got these 2-inch bases, you move them around, and you can have up to 3 of them per company. They represent your patrols from your platoons scouting ahead of the main force. They personally don't do any fighting, but they can be swapped out for an infantry platoon. So it's kind of an unusual rule. In that they don't represent a fighting force at all. They can be killed, but at some point during the game, you can switch them into a fighting force. So I think it's an interesting concept to... They're kind of like dummy markers, but they're not really dummy markers. So let's use this as an example. You got your 3 combat patrols out. You have no platoons. And you send your 3 combat patrols up the center, and they could be transferred into platoons, right? So your opponent says, okay, I have 3 platoons coming up the center. Well, it's not true. You have 3 combat patrols that could be platoons, right? And then he could kill 1 or 2 of those combat patrols, let's say, and on your turn, you recreate your combat patrols because you can regenerate them, but they don't have to go back where they were. You can put them somewhere else. Let's say you put them on the right flank, and then they move up, and then at some point you decide, I want these on the flank to turn into platoons. You put your platoons down, and your opponent thought you were going up the center, but really you wound up going up the right side or something. It's kind of an interesting concept. I kind of like it. I really like it. At first I was saying, that was the rule that I was saying, that's just bullshit. That's totally unnecessary. There's no reason to do any of that. But maybe there is. Okay. Okay, maybe I've already done all the backpacks. Yeah, maybe I have. Okay. Knowing that those are elite, I'm going to add an elite head per elite backpack. But what, so that limits the artillery, which made me very happy. Right? I was like, okay, so there is artillery. There's a couple of ways artillery is used. It's initial bombardment and the fire missions. Which I'm happy about. That's 2 good things. And even if it's a complicated system, you're only doing it like 5 times total in the game. So I'm okay with that. Even if it is super deadly, you're only doing it 5 times total in the game. So I'm picking up all the elite backpacks first. That way I can get all the elite heads. basically the elite heads, I'm just using the ones with the pom-poms that are extra large. The double-sized pom-poms. These are all Waterloo, Warlord Waterloo French. And they're all with like covered shakos and greatcoats. So what does that mean for my figures? I'm not painting up a whole bunch of new figures. I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to take my squads that I have based already for battle group. I'm going to debase them. I'm going to rebase them on two-figure bases. Now they can still be used for battle group. They just won't be on those four-figure bases. So to have like a 10-man squad, now I will have 5 bases. So basically, I'm still going to retain the ability to play battle group, test of battle, and O group. With the same figures, based two-figure. I plan to use the small Flames of War bases. And I'm going to put 2 figures. I might put 3 figures on like medium machine guns and mortars and stuff like that. I don't know. Now I think Test of Battle uses a single figure for a command stand. don't remember. Company commander. I think O Group does as well for their company commanders. So if I have a few guys single, that'll be good. Because, like, in battle group, the Vickers, the Lewis, no, Vickers, no, not the Vickers, the Bren gun. Bren gun can be deployed separately from the squad. But it's a 3-man team. So a 2-figure base would not work for that. But a 3-figure base would. So I think I'm going to do all my platoons or all my stands as 3-figure stands. For both Test of Battle and O Group. But in Battle Group, if I need 10 men, then I'll just have to add a base with 1 figure. As like the NCO or a scout or something. Just a single figure who can always be a casualty. Yeah, so I think I'm going to be able to rebase with all 3 game systems in mind. Which I got really excited about that. When I realized I was going to be rebasing for Test of Battle and O Group, I said to myself, would this work with Battle Group? And the answer is yes. Just a little thoughtful. So basically, I'll have 3 games depending on the scale that I want to play in. Do I want to play a company-sized game, or do I want to play a battalion-sized game, or do I want to play a regiment-sized game? With each set of rules handling a different scale. Yeah, there's a scenario in Battle Group that has like 3 companies, or 3 companies plus supports and everything on the table, and I thought to myself, that's a lot of figures. British scenario. But it's also would be a nightmare for logistics figure-wise. And everything. But if I was to play that very same battle with O Group, that would be like a normal battle for O Group with 3 companies on the table. Okay, spotting. I talked about this earlier. I didn't like the fact that there's too much emphasis on spotting. In battle group. So in O group, they resolved this very easily. And I'm very smooth, very elegantly so when you shoot, you throw a certain number of dice, right? You go bang, bang, bang. Let's say you throw 6 dice, which I think is a standard. Now, and you can, there's one die that you throw simultaneously, which right there makes the game go a little faster. You throw a spotting die, which is like a different color. At the same time, you throw your to hit dice. The to hit dice are always, from what I gather, I don't know the rules yet. From what I gather, they're always 4+. 7+ if it's a tank. Like any tank. So, on 2 dice. But infantry platoon throws 6 dice. 4s are better. Are hits. Always. And then you throw the spotting die with it. And guess what number you're looking for on the spotting die? 4+. So for every hit, your opponent gets a save. Guess what the save is? 4+. Okay, so far so good. This is like super easy, right? Now here's where the nuance comes in. If you spot him, he gets a 4+. But if you failed to spot him, you still roll. You've already rolled your 2 hit dice, and you've already counted the hits because there were 4 better. But because you didn't spot him, he now saves on a 3 plus. I was like, that is freaking elegant. Fast. Doesn't change how many dice, how many times you have to roll dice. You don't roll dice to determine and then with modifiers and then figure out this or that. You just roll and you're looking for a 4 or better. And ranges on your rifles are super short anyway. You should be close enough to see them if you can see them. Because I think their scale is 1 inch is 25 yards. And max range of your weapon, I think, is 14 inches. I think. So 12 inches is only, what, 300 yards? So you're looking at 350 yards. Which is still pretty far when it comes to an actual battle. Most engagements happen at very short ranges. And it's not because, you know, you wanted to get close to see the whites of their eyes. It was because in the real world, you can't usually see much further than that. Like if you go outside and like look down the road, how far can you actually see? Now, if you're out in the countryside, how far can you actually see at ground level? Not very far, because there's usually dips in the ground, there's bushes or hedges, fences or walls, hills or buildings or whatever, get ditches and gullies. And I think if you're up on a hill, you can see and shoot further, I think. I don't know the rules yet. Don't get me wrong. I'm just quoting from what I remember. I have a PDF and I have looked through it, but it was really just an initial glance through. So you get to know how many. Now let's say he's in a building or he's behind cover. It doesn't affect your spotting die roll, but it does affect how many dice you roll to shoot. So, but that's like a predetermined, it's super obvious. Because like, let's say he's in a building and you reduce your dice by 2, you still roll 1 spotting die and then the 4 to hit dice. And you're still looking for 4s or better. So instead of modifying, which I love, I'm going to have to tell you, instead of modifying the die roll, you modify how many dice you roll. I like systems like that. My Marshals and Generals game was originally going to be that kind of a game. It was going to be dice modified by hedges or bunkers or woods or walls. Maybe if someone was disordered or something like that. But then I decided to use the colored dice system instead, because that puts the chart into the dice. Now, in that game, O group, you can move and shoot. And if you do, you lose 2 dice. Let's say you started with 6. You move and shoot into a building. Now you're only rolling 2 dice. But your to hit number is still a 4. And his save is still a 4. If you spot him. Well, what does this mean for my channel? I'm going to do some solo games. Of O group and Test a Battle. But I'm also going to have a boot camp for each. Thinking about ordering a pizza. I'm like super hungry. I could order it for, okay, it's all 11 o'clock. So I ordered some small Flames of War bases. Basically, I've just given myself 3 new projects, I think. My O group, Test of Battle. Figure-wise, it's pretty much going to be the same figures. But I am going to be doing boot camps for each. But I also have some movement trays coming in specifically for Oathmark. I think I'm going to paint units for Oathmark on a gradual basis. Maybe 1 unit a month or something like that. Okay, let me rephrase that. 1 box a month. A box pretty much is 3 units. And I think I'm going to start with the heavy dwarves. Either that or the elves. Dwarves and elves have never really been my thing. But I kind of want to paint some elves and some dwarves. Mainly because they've never really been my thing. This will be exciting for me. I've almost always had humans or undead. And I painted orcs mainly as opponents. And for D&D and stuff. Nah, I don't think I'm going to order a pizza. I think I'll just eat something here. Wow, I've only been doing elite backpacks and heads. I think I've done more than half. Now I've got the metal command stands. That I still need to wash. So I plan to take all the metal pieces, wash them off camera, which I always wash them off camera anyway, but. And then I might even do some assembly off camera. Now, one thing I noticed about O Group that's different from my experience with Command Decision is that they make built-up areas like a farm with its surrounding wall, or because remember, it is a scaled up version of reality, right? And a man is not a man. A 2-figure base represents about 8 to 12 men. So you would think that a building would represent a couple of different buildings. Kind of like Command Decision or my Marshals and Generals. So I think O Group will need something like a town sector, except they call it a built-up area. But it's technically a town sector. So I might need either make some bases that I can put a building in the middle of, or glue some towns onto a base. I don't think I want to do that. I think I want to do my old Command Decision way. Have felt represent the built-up area and just put a building on top of it, and then now I can get some felt and texture it, you know, like I did the roads, and then put dirt or grass on it. Or I could stretch my model building, make some built up areas like I did that church for Lapeer Bridge. I gave the church a wall around it and then put a cemetery inside that wall. And I can make some walls, you know, get like a MDF. Make a little built up area template. I don't know what the rules call for. But I want it to be flexible. Not in the fact that it's physically flexible, but I can use it for multiple situations. So if I glue it down onto a hard base, I'm pretty much locking myself in to using that only one way. Okay, I might be out of... Nope, there's one. I was going to say I might be out of elites. Yeah, that one's already finished. Is also okay. Good. So I'm looking for little swords. On a backpack. I don't see any. Doesn't mean they're not there. I just don't see any. All right. Oh, my back. Okay, so now we're going to do regular backpacks. With heads. Okay, there's no pom-pom to hold on to. And if while doing these backpacks I run into an elite by accident, I'll just do an elite head at that time. Okay, we're getting ready to end for the day. I'll probably do the rest of these after lunch. But one more thing I want to say. Prices. Okay. Knowing that I was thinking about doing some test of battle or O group, I thought I might try some 12 millimeter. And at a company or battalion sized game, the 12 mil infantry would look, and at the scale of the ground, would look appropriate. I think they would look really good. I don't need that backpack. No, I'm gonna... Actually, I do need the backpack. The backpacks are 1-for-1. The heads are not. So I went about looking at all my sources of 15 millimeter infantry and armor and my 12 millimeter sources. And even my 20 millimeter sources, because I was thinking that a .12 mil tank, 12 mil infantry, I could get a bag, and that would be enough to do a battalion or two in O group. or Plastic Soldier, 15 mil, or Old Glory 15 mil, or whatever, right? So I priced out 15s, 12s, and 20s. And my 15s still came out to be the best deal. I don't know if you also don't know this or not, but Plastic Soldier on their website have 3D printed German tanks. I'm sure eventually they'll branch off into other nations, but they were pretty reasonably priced. Well, yeah, so they were like $6 or $7 per tank. Now, the Old Glory miniatures are $30, but you get 3 tanks. And they're metal. So, effectively, they're $10 a tank, which is normal. You can get $10 Flames of War plastic. You can get $10 Old Glory plastic. Plastic Soldier Company winds up being about $10 a model, approximately. Not exact. But the resin models, or I should say the 3D printed models, were like $6 for one. And they're, if you're playing O group, some of those tanks, you only need 1 or 2 for a whole platoon. So by getting them at 3 from Old Glory or 5 from Plastic Soldier, you're paying more and you're getting too many. Now, Command Decision, three tanks would be a company, so that's like it's perfect for that. Yeah, I found some models. I always thought that 1/72 plastic would be the cheapest, right? Airfix, Revell, Italeri, whatever. And they weren't. They were priced at about $10 for 50 models. And you say to yourself, wow, that's a good deal. I don't know why I had them marked higher. Let me think about this. Maybe it was because of the tanks. But again, you start getting into that thing called scale creep, and then I'm starting to make my models bigger, and the tanks alone are like would take up a lot more space compared to 15s. So you're getting a lot bigger. Infantry would have to be on bigger bases because, I mean, you could put two figures on a small Flames of War size base, but they would look cramped, or they looked like they would be overlapping like my old Command Decision figures were. They were all like super cramped. Yeah, let me just say, I'm excited. I've decided to stay with 15s because I already have a bunch, and all I got to do is rebase them, and the prices are fairly reasonable. Plus, just from a selfish point of view, I get a really good discount from Old Glory. Good enough to make it reasonable compared to like 1/72. 12 mil was about the same price. And I just said, if it's the same price, just stay with 15s. All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me. I appreciate it. I'm going to go to lunch. And then I'll probably glue whatever. I mean, I'm going to get the rest of the backpacks and heads done. I'll glue this, and then we'll be ready to start something different tomorrow, which might be the cavalry or the metal figures, the artillery. I'm not sure, but I am going to keep working on these. I owe it to this customer. He's already paid me a third of the commission. All right, guys. I'll catch you next time.